Keeping up with content creation for retail and social media, product detail pages, email campaigns, and print is a never-ending process. Brands need to stay ahead, but managing content across platforms is overwhelming. That's exactly what we're talking about in today's episode, and it's exactly why It's Rapid exists. Big brands like Pepsi, Mondelez, and Instacart use It's Rapid to automate their creative workflows, eliminating manual bottlenecks and wasted time while producing high-quality content at scale faster than ever before. With It's Rapid, you can scale banner creation across multiple retail and social media networks, create above and below the fold images, videos, and copy for Amazon, Walmart, and other channels, build optimized content for email marketing campaigns, and produce sell sheets, catalogs, and print formats for trade shows and in-store promotions. If today's conversation gets you thinking about how much effort goes into content production, it's time to rethink your approach. Visit itsrapid.ai to learn how top brands are scaling smarter and faster using our all-in-one content creation solution. And now, on with the show.
Welcome to Beyond the Shelf with Dave Feinlieb. This show is an open exploration of the people and process behind e-commerce. Through conversations with innovators in the space, we learn the stories of these leaders and their strategies for e-commerce success. We publish new episodes every Tuesday morning, so be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And now, here's your host, Dave Feinlieb.
Welcome back to Beyond the Shelf. Today, we're excited to have Matthew Adam Smith, the founder and CEO of Two Isaacs, a strategic consultancy that guides retailers, brands, and platforms in accelerating their businesses through AI and advanced technologies. Matthew's extensive background includes leading commercial transformations at Walmart and founding Commerce Cares, a nonprofit uniting professionals within retail marketing and technology to drive positive societal change. He also serves as the host of the Air Leaders podcast for Rethink Retail.
That was a mouthful.
Excited to have you on the show, Matthew. It's great to have you here.
Excited to be here, man.
Where are you today? Let's start with that.
Ooh, we are in the Jersey suburbs just outside of New York City, South Orange, New Jersey.
Nice.
Which,
I like
which
it.
I call home.
Yeah, that's awesome. And take us back. How'd you get your start in the space?
Picture it, Sicily, 1927, right?
You don't seem like you
not
can't
quite
be
that
that
old.
No, yeah,
No.
right.
It's a long, twisted tale, but essentially, I think like a lot of folks, maybe around my age, I got into the business world at a time where you didn't necessarily have to, draw a line between your degree or your training and sort of like the work you do. I tripped into advertising kind of early in my career on the agency side. Pretty cool gig. We got sick access to really, top people at top brands because we were doing segment marketing across like LGBTQ, which back then was, gay and lesbian or GNL. And then it was, we started adding letters, over time, and then other segment markets like, Asian Americans and Hispanic, which is of course Latinx now. And so, yeah, it was kind of like a candy store, sort of just like really lucky, right place, right time. And then parlayed that into ad sales jobs at some cool brands over the years. And eventually, managing sales teams at places like Wired and Fast Company, and launched a brand for Dr. Oz. And before he sort of became the version of him that we know today. And, parlayed that into some tech jobs and a startup space. And I think it was just a combination of factors, which, came together as this thing we now call retail media, that brought, not just me, but all sorts of folks from across the advertising and data, ecosystem into the fold, at Big Blue. And yeah, several years later, I'm still here, still doing it. No longer at Walmart, but
it's amazing the business growth on Walmart Connect. I want to come back around to that, and also the talent like yourself and other folks that they've attracted to the organization has been amazing.
Yeah. I was actually looking on a Google Drive yesterday, that old folder, and I've got all these documents that are WMG, underscore this. Before it was even called Walmart Connect, it was called the Walmart Media Group. And
That's right.
So yeah, that takes us back to, I guess, around 2019, and
Yeah.
I made the mistake, sort of foot in mouth, last year at Shop Talk at a party that the CPG guys were hosting, when I introduced myself to some folks I didn't know, and they said, "Who are you?" And I said, "Well, I was in the launch team for Walmart's retail media group, Walmart Connect," and it turns out I was standing across from a couple of gentlemen who had been involved 10 years prior, in earlier iterations of retail media, right? I think that happens in large companies. There's sort of goldfish memory, and leadership changes and partner changes,
Versioning, market timing, all these.
I mean, Triad largely executed the business until we came on to basically in-house the business from Triad, and then fast forward to today. I think last earnings, it was more than $7 billion, which is about a third or more of Walmart's net operating income. So really, just a fascinating experiment. I'm sure we can unpack and go from there.
Well, tell us about Two Isaacs, and then I've got a couple of follow-ups for you on Connect and the growth there.
Yeah. I love just telling people, basically I start from Two Isaacs has one founder, and his name is Matthew, and people are sort of mystified by that.
Gets the attention, though.
Yeah. You know what? Again, probably it's I'm betraying my career in advertising, where it's like I came up with these companies, these agencies that had wacky names, 72 and Sunny, and Turks and Frogs, Mad Dogs and Englishmen, and sort of like just Giant Spoon, just be memorable. But there's a story behind it, because we're a technology consultancy. Essentially, we exist to help retailers and brands transform internally, transform the way they show up to customer, really accelerate their business by implementing largely AI-based technologies. And the Two Isaacs are, and I love to quiz people to see if they can guess them, but usually people get the first one, which is Sir Isaac Newton, which who created the laws of motion. So the first law of motion is essentially about inertia. You need a catalyst, and then but things just keep going.
With the apple.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, that was gravity, but yeah. And then the second Isaac that people tend to not guess is Asimov, science fiction writer, who had written about cybernetics and androids, and that's really more about ethics and responsibility, and the laws of robotics. The first one, thou shalt not harm humans, essentially, right? So together, it basically embodies this idea of growth and good, or growing sustainably but responsibly. And I think we're trying to sort of find the way through, I think, and help with guidance, but which has a longer view of the business, and also, more than just sort of the retail mindset of show me the receipts, right? And how many sales today, how many sales this week? Certain things about retail that are always going to keep us focused on that sort of last touch attribution. Yeah. But I think the really exciting thing about AI and a lot of this other tech that it's fueling is the ability to just crunch data in a way that can help us, crack some of these bigger questions and bigger issues, and not just think about moving product, but think about, how we work together to do it. We think about people. We think about, how we as tribal mammals come around the fire now together, that we have these really amazing tools. So that's what Two Isaacs is here to do.
So have you always been this good a storyteller? That's the key to how you got into...
Again, I tripped into the advertising business, and I did it at a time when I described ad sales as sort of half strategy, half theater. My first gig was selling ads in magazines. And I joke, that my mother, again, I'll talk about her a lot probably, but I think for the first year, because ad sales is this invisible industry, right? It's like you don't really know how the sausage is made. You just kind of see the ad on TV and nobody cares, how it got there. But I think for the first year, my mother just thought I was selling like magazine subscriptions door to door or something. But yeah, no, I am a believer in the power of storytelling. And I've actually, it's been in the ether. I've seen this sort of hit the lexicon lately, maybe just because we're all teched out in a way. But these notions of, at the end of the day, we're just storytellers. And, most of business, in fact, this week, the one that really hit home for me, was a quote about how most of business is just how you make people feel. and how people feel about you. It's about the qual that makes the quant possible. So you're kind to say it, but yeah, I love a good story. And I actually, like two Isaacs, I'm a big believer in two ears, one mouth. I know that I'm kind of the guest here, but I love to learn more. I love any forum where I leave, having taken more from it in terms of knowledge and inspiration, right, than maybe even I contributed. So no pressure on you, my friend. No pressure at all.
Yeah, it's tough doing these podcasts. I tell you, that's why I have two ears also, and I can listen to all these amazing guests. And I do want to come back to a point you made on Walmart Connect. This way that you framed it, and now there have been multiple incarnations of Connect, as you mentioned, but sort of the current one, the most recent one, let's say got to start maybe around 2019 or so.
Yep.
Tell us about that growth. I mean, it's really something we didn't even hear about on an earnings call until the last few years.
I'm of two minds about this, right? And one mind basically recognizes and, to some extent takes responsibility, like for the growth of something that's become super dominant in the industry, right? I think 7 out of 10 new media dollars, through 2030 will fall within retail media. But I'm equally, I think, because I'm not so wed to retail media, so vertically now. I had another business at Walmart I helped launch, which was Marketplace, and of course, I'm really kind of a retail geek, and really more broadly a commerce geek. And it occurs to me that when a third of your net operating income is coming from monetizing the data on the retail, and the retail itself is only growing at, let's say, 3 or 4% a year. That's not sustainable, right? So I'm actually very excited about the power of the technology now to maybe just help us do the retailing better, and actually, if we can actually start to make margin on the retail itself, I think, hey, if we can monetize the data, all the better. And ideally, those things work in harmony, which is a fascinating tale about retail media, because essentially, it hits a point where enough money is trading hands that if it's not doing the hard work of actually driving sales, it's a net loss, right? And I think this is also where the AI starts to crunch the data in a way where we can start to see that, even if you sign and you run, let's say, $30 million a year, right, from a major consumer goods company through an RMN, the attribution models become so sophisticated that we know, was it really a net positive ROAS of $3, $4, $5, or if all things being equal,
right,
it would have been better to throw this into TV, right, or out of home.
Yeah.
But end of the day, it's about using that huge wealth of first party shopper data that the retailers command to try to focus messages and target messages and then monetize those, right? So not surprised that it's taking off the way it did. I mean, I don't know where we fall, 6 years out on. Vis-a-vis McKinsey's projection, in the concept deck that probably got this thing going, 7 or 8 years ago when they were standing up the business. But
yeah,
I mean, no signs of slowing whatsoever.
Yeah, amazing. And will you talk about display? And then I want to shift over to AI.
Yeah,
where does that fit? How do you think about search versus display and all the other formats that we're seeing, CTV and all that?
Yeah, it's super interesting. Because the model was, of course, Amazon, which is largely pay-per-click search. There's some other products in there, but mostly because we've all been trained to utilize Amazon as our sort of default search engine, right? We assume that we can find everything we need there. The monetization is really about not so much driving education and sort of like top-down high funnel discovery as it is sort of helping the customer along the journey they've already initiated, right? And that's obviously goes hand in hand with Amazon's model of 2/3 of their business being from third-party marketplace sellers, right? So super conversion focused. So that the irony and maybe the dirty little secret is that when you're an omni-channel retailer launching a major RMN, and I don't actually know the split today, but certainly for the first few years, display media was a larger contributor, to the overall revenue. And that's using the first party data to, educate, drive discovery, drive engagement. But the beauty of it is when you're omni-channel, the attribution for that sale can come not just on the .com, and honestly, more likely, more of that ROAS was seen certainly in the early days in the store. Brenda sees an ad on Walmart.com. She doesn't convert, but we know through the attribution model, first party shopper data farmed out, from register to Experian, and comes back and basically at least at a household level, we know somebody in the household saw this ad, and then Brenda, through the credit card data, we know she bought it. And so it's interesting to me that when we get into new products like in-store advertising, right? It'll be interesting to see how that starts to actually cut into sort of the .com display budget, because the attribution obviously is so much more direct.
Right.
Brenda sees the ad on the shelf in front of her, or we know she passes by it, or she saw it at checkout yesterday, and then she comes back. So I think it really starts to close the distance, right, between the advertising exposure and the actual conversion. At the same time, monetizing search, that is where the long tail of the growth is, because most of the retail growth will come from e-commerce. Most of the e-commerce growth, particularly at Walmart, will come from third-party marketplace. And a lot of those sellers are less focused on things like, high-level halo branding, seeding messages weeks and months out for a conversion that might happen, 6 months later. It's a lot more transactional. And I think that's where a lot of the tech is driving us.
This episode of Beyond the Shelf is brought to you by It's Rapid. It's Rapid is the platform Pepsi, Mondelez, Instacart, and hundreds of other leading brands and retailers use to build personalized content at scale. Whether that's images, videos, or product descriptions for their product detail pages, shoppable videos or banners for their digital ad campaigns, or sell sheets for sales enablement, brands that use It's Rapid are able to produce high-quality, on-brand content on average more than 80% faster than category competitors. To find out more, please visit itsrapid.ai.
So I want to switch gears. AI, that's what you're focused on now. And first of all, how's it been being an entrepreneur?
I'm not very good at it. You could probably tell I geek out pretty easily, and I love an empty whiteboard, right?
Yeah, isn't that what being an entrepreneur is all about?
I'm staring at my whiteboard now, actually, and it's littered with things I haven't done yet.
Right.
I'm getting better at it. I think I really loved big corporate, but I was always kind of the I don't want to say I was the bull in the china shop, right? But I was definitely probably more of the entrepreneur and the one who liked breaking stuff, and really geeked out on the strategy, and sort of the disruption. So I do well, in sort of like standing up big businesses. So I think being an entrepreneur, I've been able to sort of scratch that itch, right? But it's a give and take, right? Because you also don't have the sort of forcing function, of a budget and a number to hit and a team who depends on you and a boss to answer to, and so that's of course the challenge is like, becoming the operations expert, right? And sort of self-policing and establishing the discipline you need. I'm still figuring that part out for sure, but definitely love doing this now, sort of unconstrained with total latitude, right? At a time where it's just, the business is just doing such amazing things. It's, I'm I don't know if we'll play the video here, but if anybody sees this, I'm grinning right now.
I got it. I can see how excited you are about it. So tell us about that. Like, what kind of clients are you working with? What sort of, business problems are you focused on?
Yeah. When I speak at events and stuff, sometimes I start by just polling the crowd. I say, raise your hand if you know what GPT stands for. And most people don't. A couple confident people might think they do, and they actually, they don't know. They think it means something other than it does, right? But I usually don't even tell them what it stands for. And I say, you don't probably need to know what it stands for, right? And that's a way of kind of like, I think, talking folks back from the ledge of, there's this fear, this nervousness, right? But a lot of it's psychological, right? Like, is it here to take my job? I'm not a tech person. This is what the CIO and CTO do and the engineering team. That's why they're there. And I think so for the first, let's say, 18 months or so, since maybe 2 NRFs ago, right? When suddenly, particularly last NRF a year ago, everybody showed up as an AI company, right? And so there's this in the Gartner hype cycle, right? It's like we've definitely been in this sort of peak of expectations, and some would say a lot of noise and hype, which can be scary, I think, to line of business owners. And there's these questions about like, what is it? Is it really going to be so disruptive? How will it be disruptive? In what way? How can I use it? Do I have to close this knowledge gap, right? And so I think where we start is just probably you're not going to have to know much about the way the sausage is actually made, because AI is an ingredient. It's not a thing, right? It's an accelerant. It's like fuel on the fire. It does, because we can crunch more data in more interesting ways and faster, that compute power obviously does create new tools. But I like to quote Eric Jokenstaller of Vivaldi, founder of Vivaldi Group, branding agency, legend in the industry. But he started as a data scientist, which I also think is fascinating that you could be a data scientist and a professor by training who like goes on to found a branding agency. That gives me hope, of quantum
Exactly.
qual living in harmony, right?
Well, you never know. Art and science go together.
Yeah, one here, sort of a razzle dazzle, magician from ad sales is suddenly, working in technology. It works both ways. But he would describe it as sort of think of the hospital. And, you have the orderly and you have the nurse and you have the nurse practitioner and you have the LN and you have the doctor and you have the head of surgery and you have the administrator. And all of them do very different things. Now imagine that, everyone can sort of go one peg up, one rung up. And suddenly the nurse is, doing things that previously a doctor could only do. And then zoom out and think that actually you can orchestrate the ballet of what everyone's doing now that they're up-leveled and upskilled in a way that's also more efficient. And so it's not just about I do more things or I do the same thing better and faster, but also so does my colleague. And now together we work together and coordinate in a way that's, even, net faster and better than before. Right. And so long setup to basically say, when you take that posture, it really empowers lines of business owners from across the value chain to be, I wouldn't say AI experts, but to be AI doers, right? Because this tech in retail can really push on every aspect of the value chain, from how we source, ingredients, to how we choose to manufacture, to how we ship, to when and where we ship, right? To how we house and warehouse and pick, pack, and then ship onto customer. All of that stuff happens, in the realm of the value chain that the brand manufacturer owns. And then suddenly, you get to retailer, and then they own that last mile. And there's so much that can happen, whether it's a DTC or a retailer, in terms of now we're talking about AI to show up to customer, right? And control how customer experiences brand and retail, et cetera, right? And so there's space there for most executives, pretty much every executive, every leader, in a retail operation. And end of the day, Stacy Shulman from Intel, she's the retail lead at Intel. She would say, don't have an AI program, use AI to drive your existing program. So I think it's very exciting. It's intimidating to folks when they don't hear that narrative out there so much, because they think they need to become an expert. But the reality is, your engineering, your CTO, your CIO, yeah, they're doing the critical infrastructure work, right? The data security, the compliance, et cetera. But the actual stuff, that it's powering,
business use
it's
case.
Stuff that directly drives a KPI of a line of business owner. And so just pick a KPI, pick one, right? And fire away. And, if you're a large enterprise, you're probably in bed with, Microsoft for Azure, and, you have, enterprise contracts with all of the LLMs and stuff, but most people don't. And the beauty is there's a lot of really cool, useful tech out there that's being built that's very use case specific and very approachable for a business person. Yeah.
So on the org, let's just play that out a little bit. Are the listeners be thinking about they should individually be experts? Do you think we're going to have, the way we have chief data officers? Are we going to have chief AI officers, let's say?
I hope not. And, this has been a big question, certainly over the last year. I think we're a little bit closer, but it was an open question, let's say a year ago, should we have a chief AI officer, right? And I think that's just our instinct is we go to something this pivotal and groundbreaking needs a direct owner, right?
Yeah, right.
But I go back to it's an ingredient, not a thing. And the beauty of it, most of its efficacy comes from it being a horizontal, right? I love the example of pick two lines of business in retail that have historically hated each other, right? Customer service and marketing, right? One's a sunk cost that's just trying to stop the bleeding. And the other is meant to be a net positive contributor, to EBITDA.
Right.
And, never the two shall meet. AI doesn't respect that boundary because suddenly something like, certainly with agentic and AI, concierge, I might, go to fillintheblank.com with a problem, but, AI knows everything about me. It knows not just how to solve the problem through a refund or a discount or what have you, but it's going to be able to use that moment, to do things like upselling and recommendations, right? And really thinking in terms of a longer view of CLTV, right? Suddenly, a customer service session becomes, a commerce session. And when that happens, when the tech necessarily goes there, you can't silo those two KPIs any longer, right? You also can't have the owner of that, being in a silo themselves. So I think one of the things we are seeing is, chief transformation officers, chief innovation officers.
Yeah.
I think those are really interesting because they're sort of the Henry Kissinger, role of the shuttle diplomacy of somebody has to sort of, go meet people in Paris and then fly to New York and then fly so and so. And so it's somebody has to do the meeting with marketing and then the meeting with customer service and find the common ground and, bring them together. But yeah, I think short answer is no, don't have a chief AI officer because you can't bottle this up, right? And it needs to extend across all aspects of the business horizontally.
And you mentioned a few use cases earlier, everything from supply chain to marketing to customer success you just talked about. What are you seeing? Where are the most real world use cases right now that you're seeing? And then where do you think we're headed the next couple of years?
Yeah. Right now, and I would say even for the past year, I think pipelines were really strong for AI solution providers in retail. Close rates were really low, right? And I think just a lot of discussion had to happen. I think, culturally, certainly, among executive leadership. And we're at the point now where I think folks are actually dipping toes, right? And starting to pull the trigger. But again, it really depends, I think, on the size of business and sort of where you fall on the spectrum. So I mentioned, Walmart earlier, but, the Fortune 50 and sort of the top retailers and brands are certainly doing more building while also partnering. But the math on buy, build, partner, I think this time around is really strong on partnering for most people, right? Again, because there are so many just individual, discrete, vertical use cases and solutions to do it. I will say, though, where we're seeing the work actually happen now is a lot more in e-commerce and sort of, digital applications than it is in store. I mean, I'll caveat that a bit and say, the store solutions that we see tend to be digital solutions in store, right?
Right.
Let's say a Diebold, next door for smarter sort of edge solutions, smart checkout, for example, right?
Yeah.
But most of the solutions we see now, they have to sort of pass the litmus test of easy to implement, low capex, and fast ROI, right? And clear ROI, and that all just points to digital and e-commerce and marketing and advertising and personalization and things like that. Where it goes further out, it takes a little more capex, which is where in the land of retail we really start to break down that wall between store and digital, and we really get to unified commerce, where the product is sitting, if it's on a shelf or in a fulfillment center, and where I am in relation to that product physically ceases to matter, because technology is driving it, right? And I think so. That takes capex. If we're talking about electronic shelf labeling and beacon technology, computer vision, things like this, these take a lot of capex, and those are bigger builds. The sales cycle's longer. We're talking, ROI 18 months or greater. It's where it's going. But right now, folks are pulling the trigger on stuff where they can see returns instantly.
I love it. Great synopsis of the space. I'm super excited for you and your new venture. I know who the two Isaacs are now, so I'm excited about that. And we've got the rapid rundown here, which is a few fast-paced questions for you. Just your quick thoughts. First off, what do you consider the most impactful AI development in retail recently?
Well, look, this is the year of agentic, right? And I could just stop there, but for the audience, that basically means you've got a computer putting things together, making combinations of data to do processes, in the background that you used to have to do manually, right? And so, super exciting ramifications for that across lines of business. I was at an HR event, this week rather, that was all about how HR is now increasingly looking at org design and two sides of the house. You've got your human team and you have your AI agent team, right?
Yeah,
and how do you actually start to design work and workflows for non-humans, right? So I think agentic is super sexy right now.
Super interesting. Emerging markets, which ones hold the most potential for e-com growth?
I would say, I wouldn't say the U.S., but I think that's probably, although ironically people would call, the U.S. when Walmart used to actually call the U.S. emerging when it came to e-commerce. But I think, ironically, in terms of we're talking, sort of year on year growth. I would actually look at where the AI infrastructure, the AI compliance, and the legal architecture for AI is the most mature, and that honestly, that's Europe. So it might seem like Europe is sort of tapped out in terms of growth potential, but
this could be an unlock.
Particularly around speed to market for these solutions, right? So in terms of percentage gains, and COC, it's I would say Europe is super exciting, and that really surprises people when I say that.
Your go-to tech tool or app that enhances your daily productivity.
I just yesterday tried to get access to Manus, which is the new Chinese GPT for lack of a better term, but it's I'm on the wait list. So my go-to right now has been Claude, through Anthropic. I just find it super intuitive. I find the RAGs that it uses to be pretty effective for my needs. It's an LLM. It's an interface for me to be able to talk to a generative AI application, text based. Although there are some applications that it's connected to that can produce images and video and things like that. But it's like anything. It's dependent on the power of the prompt, right? And the better the prompt is, the better the output. And don't fall into the trap of thinking that it remembers everything you told it before, because it doesn't have the power to do that. But it's a GPT competitor, I would say.
Yeah, it's such a great point. At It's Rapid, when we talk about adoption, I always talk about the prompt and prompt engineering, because you've got to get that right in order to get great output. So,
and I think people don't realize that these, for good reasons, they're not scraping real time web data. I mean, I think a couple of the Chinese releases, DeepSeek and now Manus, are doing that a little more directly, right? There are some RAGs that help with that. And I was actually shocked. And I asked Claude, I was surprised, because an answer it gave me referenced, I think it was about the Oscars or something. And it knew who had won the Oscars, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, wait a minute, how do you know who won the Oscars? And then went down the rabbit hole of the AI telling me how the AI knew something that had just happened, that it wasn't necessarily included in the training data last October. So that's always interesting to me. When you never know which parts of the ecosystem it is able to scrape until you just ask a question, and then sometimes you get lucky. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and then you see where the state is now. Advice for listeners who are looking to start their own e-com venture, or maybe do something in AI.
Don't do it. Run. No, I'm kidding. No, do it now. And I always say, even if you were, let's say, in a big company and you sort of suspect that you maybe toy with the idea of starting your own thing, now's the time. Honestly, don't wait. There's so much room, right, for just good ideas, I think, to flourish. Some of the naysayers think this is a bubble and it's going to burst. But again, I think it's fundamentally different, and that it's an ingredient, it's an accelerant
Yeah.
And it's an enabler of kinds of technologies that we've never, ever seen before. And I think that's been the point that's been maybe hard to get across to some of the old school, retail battle axes, right? The executives. It's like, is this, who are just sort of programmed to think, oh, it's just the latest hype. It's like Web3, 3 years ago. It's like, Internet of Things 10 years ago, et cetera. It'll blow over, right? It's like, it's not going to blow over, right? So I would say, like, my advice is honestly just, if you have any inclinations, if you have any part of your soul that thinks you might want to start a business, like, now is the time. And you don't have to be a data engineer to do it. Look at me.
You're proof that you can be a great storyteller. You can look at the data and do some really cool work in the space. Matthew Adam Smith, not one Isaac, not three Isaacs, two Isaacs. We know who they are now. What is the best way for our listeners to reach you online if they want to do that?
Yeah, LinkedIn. I live on LinkedIn. So just find me on LinkedIn. I go by my full name, Matthew Adam Smith, because two reasons. One, Matthew Smith is just too damn boring. And three, LinkedIn algorithm tends to reward people who put the whole name in. So you should find me if you just put that in the search bar.
Another great marketing nugget here. So we all know that. And it's been a delight talking to you today. I learned a lot about your latest endeavor, about the early days of Walmart Connect and the incredible growth there. And then AI, obviously tons of opportunity. So really excited for you.
I had a blast, man. Great talking to you. And again, you're so modest because you're actually working in this space as an entrepreneur as well. So love the inquisitive vibe here. And I love what you guys are doing too, man. So it's a pleasure to be on.
That's it for this week's episode of Beyond the Shelf. If you enjoy the show, be sure to like, subscribe, and leave us a review. It really helps us grow. And feel free to share us with your colleagues so they too can hear weekly perspectives from the brightest minds in e-commerce. You can also check us out on LinkedIn, where we post clips from each episode, share Dave's takes on breaking industry news, and much more. Beyond the Shelf is a production of It's Rapid. Our host is Dave Feinlieb, and our producers are Sean Levy-Ashvili and Jake Musiker. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time on Beyond the Shelf.